everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Calvin Gardner. I'm the CEO of Sigma. It's a great pleasure to introduce Sigma to you, and we'll get forward with the presentation. So we can just move then through the disclaimer. And before I move into this slide, I think it's just important to say that Sigma is now in pre-construction phase. And we're going into construction in the first half of this year. And on that basis, when you look at this slide, you're really now looking at EV sales, worldwide EV sales. And it's interesting to note how both China and Europe are sort of expanding their sales. Others, and mainly US, are pretty stable through the period, but you do see a massive increase of EV sales going forward from essentially 2021 and a forecast up to 2024. And interesting, obviously, Europe, both Europe and China playing a leading role in this move to EVs. So for Sigma, what we call our five pillars of excellence, where we really try to stamp our authority on. First and foremost is ESG. We do believe in climate change. Lithium and EVs and battery storage is all about climate change and trying to do better to the environment and be ESG conscious. Today, people are scored on their ESG credentials, and I can stand here in front of you and say that Sigma seems to be one of the best, if not the best, in terms of the highest ESG credentials in the lithium industry. Low cost is important for the mass adoption of the technology. The battery can be between 30 and 50% of the car price, depending on the type of battery. So battery minerals on the whole, and obviously lithium, it needs to be low cost and delivered in high purity, low cost. And not just low cost, high purity, low cost, and then move directly to the pillar of high quality. So to produce these ultra pure lithium hydroxide above 99.5% at low cost, invariably what you need is clean material going into these plants. And Sigma seem to have one of the cleanest 6% concentrate again in the industry. Large scale, this is important specifically to the OEMs and cathode makers that don't want to be bouncing around in terms of where they're getting their lithium units. They would like to have longer term contracts, 10 years or longer. And this is predominant in this area where people are securing lithium units, and specifically the higher quality lithium for their future production of both cathode and obviously OEMs. And then last but not least important for Sigma is the strong backing by Mitsui. We have a joint venture arrangement where essentially Mitsui are selling hydroxide, and together we are entering the tier 1 battery chain, where Mitsui in fairness are already there with cobalt and nickel, and will be involving with Sigma now, being able to supply this lithium, which we believe now will be shipped after construction of 12 months in the second quarter 2022. So just where we are, we're in Brazil. We have the largest hard rock deposit in both North, South America and Europe. It's very high grade, and I'll show a slide on that. But we're well placed to service into the Asian markets, into the European markets, and into the American market. So we feel very strongly that we are very universal in being able to supply across the world. And obviously here in domestic Brazil, where we have over 220 million people ourselves and very strong on fossil fuel transport, and where we will be seeing changes. We're shipping out of the port of Ilhéus. The power, we are 100% hydro. You can see the hydro station there. Minas Gerais is a well-known mining state, so you can see on the map where that is. It's been mining here for 200 years, so you can expect very good infrastructure. As you see, the road that cuts through the project, the river that cuts through the project, so we have a pipeline from this river to the plant. Although we don't use a lot of water, the water that we do use comes from this river, one of the larger rivers in Brazil. So this is about the grade, which I mentioned earlier. This is super important in terms of cost. So the higher the grade, the easier it is to get to a 6% concentrate. You can see our first project, Shusha, 1.56% grade, second highest only to Albemarle. So very, very good grades. And as I mentioned earlier, very clean product in situ. So we have very low levels of impurities, which is super important in the next stage, as I mentioned, of producing lithium hydroxide. Our second deposit, which we bring into production a year later after bringing the first project, Shusha, is also extremely high grade at 1.48%. So we do sit here in the top level of grades of pegmatites in the world. So, and we are continuing with this. We had 9 past producing mines. We're starting production with these first 2 and will bring the others into production as well. So to give you an idea of the type of quality, this is a good slide, and I always say a picture tells 1,000 words. Sigma produces the coarsest 6% concentrate in the world. There's nobody that produces a coarse concentrate. This is 0.5 millimeter to 9 millimeter at 6%. It's normally, the majority of the material is fines, as you can see, and that obviously has other processing difficulties. And the reason, again, that Sigma can actually produce this very clean coarse concentrate is simply that it is blessed with very low levels of impurities in the ground. So we're able to clean the material very clean and send it to our customers. We have produced coarse concentrate up to 7.2% to give you the idea of how clean this material really is. So 6% is very easily done at very high recoveries for Sigma, using relatively simple processing, and that obviously has benefit for the hydroxide, where they can get up to 8 to 10% higher recoveries in their converters. Next slide. So for testing our material, we one of the few companies that actually did build a pilot plant. This material, we did not sell any material. We just sent to our prospective clients for them to test it in their facilities. It's a 10-ton per hour plant. You know, it can produce over 1,000 tons a month of material should we want to do that, but obviously that's not something we're doing. And we would then ship it around the world. And importantly, no tailings dam. We don't use chemicals, all clean technology, hydro-powered, and again, meeting the ESG. As you can see, all dry processing here to process this concentrate. So here's an interesting slide showing current producers and developers. And current producers, we're also including on the slide, as you can see, the expansions announced by the various companies. And Sigma from the back as a developer, and as I mentioned, construction this year, we come in at number 5 in the world with 33,000 tons of LCE. So we've become extremely significant very early on. And as we are a very low cost producer in the bottom quartile, and in the bottom quartile, the bottom quartile of that, we believe probably only 1, maybe 2 are up with us in terms of costs, that we are very competitive. And then through the second phase, we jumped to 65,000 tons of LCE, again, second place. And in the third place, we could probably move to 4, the 4th largest. And you can see that the bigger players here are quite a step up when you look to points, you know, from number 6, 7, and 8 downwards. So really dominating the supply of lithium. And again, it's not just lithium, it's about the quality of the lithium that you're selling. There's plenty of lithium in the world. There's not that much of high quality lithium. And this is extremely important for the high nickel batteries, which you need basically high energy density. So here's our production profile. So I'm delighted. I'm sure some of you have seen our announcements recently. Where we're starting construction this year now in the second quarter. We're in pre-construction phase, and I'll talk about that, and commercial production in the second quarter 2022, where we bring our first deposit and we will start producing 220,000 tons of 6% lithium oxides in the first quarter next year. And then a year later, we bring in the second deposit. So we're building it with 2 modules, the first one, and then a year later, we'll commission the second one, where we will increase it to 440,000 tons. And then have the option, and I'll show you a slide when we would consider that option of actually extending that to 630,000 tons of material by phase 3. So, and that could be somewhere around 2025, where we do expect another surge in demand. So here's what I call the bubble chart for Sigma, where the size of the bubbles are shown of the better, I would say, lithium players in the industry. On the y-axis, you're looking at grade, so which, as I also said, it's directly related to costs. And on the x-axis, size. So size you need to be able to secure the long-term contracts with tier 1 battery makers and tier 1 OEM. So if you're too small, you just cannot be sit on the same table as the tier 1 OEMs. Grade is obviously critically important in terms of cost. And you can see Sigma started at its IPO at just about 0.5 LCE. We are currently at 1.9 million tons LCE, and we're expanding it this year to around about 3.7 million tons of LCE. So very significant expansion in terms of the resource at the Grota do Sevilha project. And then last but not least is the cleanliness. It's not easy to be shown on this graph, but Sigma is seen to be one of the cleanest concentrates in the world. So here's an interesting slide showing costs of lithium carbonate. And we show this slide because this Araçuaí Cachoeira is a small mine here that once belonged to the previous owners of Sigma that is actually operating. And this document was produced by Roskill, and you can see because of the cost basis here in Brazil and obviously clean energy, that they are actually, and even though they're relatively small, on the lowest cost percentile of this graph put out by, I think it's Roskill Benchmark that put this graph out. Next slide. Benchmark, yeah, benchmark. Next slide. So here's Sigma, and from our DFS. So the lowest cost producer is the large Australian player, but we do compete. And our DFS was done with a cash cost of 342. At that time, the exchange rate was 3.85. Today, the exchange rate is 5.22. So we do have benefit there. You can see what that does to the cash cost at 283. At 440, you can see the difficulty of prices at a price of 450. Where certain higher cost producers have been battling, and we have been seeing that. But Sigma, even in this market, is actually profitable. But we do expect the prices to move up slightly from these levels. But the other important point is, as you can see on this slide, the so-called Sigma premium. And this is really coming from the association with Mitsui, where Sigma actually benefits from receiving certain of the profitability from when Mitsui sells the hydroxide to the converters. So we share in that profitability, and that puts a premium on the market spodumene price. Next slide. So this is the offtake. It's a good lead into this offtake, where you can see our first phase now is actually sold out. We have 220,000 tons of material. It's all going to Mitsui, who back-to-back that with their cathode companies, mainly in Korea and Japan, and who will then be using this material. And also have secured another quota in terms of our second phase, going to the same customer base. So all importantly, it's the first, as you can see, it's a prepayment that we have up front for 6 years and for $30 million. And that gives them the offtake rights for 6 years with the right to renew it. And as correctly on the right-hand side, basically profit sharing from the sale of the lithium hydroxide. Next slide. So ESG, I spoke about this earlier, it really is fundamental to our business. And the three areas of E, S, and G. So in terms of environmental, we have no tailings dams, it's all dry stacking. It's low residue mining, meaning that the rejects we actually sell into the ceramic industry. The DMS plant does not use any chemicals whatsoever, only water, and we recycle 90% of that water. So it's very low usage of direct from the river, less than 15 cubes per hour. In fact, we have a license for 50, but the volumes are small because we recirculate that water. Socially transformational, you can see on the graph, the area we come from is particularly poor with a HDI index of 0.663, and Sigma is the largest investor in this region by 20 times. We will produce in the first phase 300 jobs and 200 indirect jobs, but closely associated with Sigma. And then in the second phase, another 200 permanent jobs. So royalties to be paid over $50 million will be going into this city. And that is of the order of 16 times the current budget. So the impact that we're doing here is huge. Sinai is a training program that we put together under UN development goals, where we're actually putting training schools in here specifically for technical training, and that now is moving forward. And the governance, all important. 2 of our 6 board members are independent. We're Canadian listed, as was mentioned, but we have a most diverse board with 50% being women. And we audited to the highest standard, KPMG financially and SGS Canada on a technical audit. So in terms of the goals, you can see the sort of the corporate mission and the climate, industry, innovation, sustainability, and obviously economic health. But what you do is actually get rated on all these 17 ESG areas. And we're going through a formal audit at the moment by a company called Minviro, who's actually who's an independent auditor to actually check these points out, so that there's not people just talking about it, that we have an independent verification of our ESG credentials. On that front, obviously we're very proud of this. Sigma was invited as one of the ESG compliant companies to present at the Sustainable Mining case study at the World Summit at COP25. Ana Cabral, our co-chairman and strategic director, presented there, one of 2 companies that presented on ESG in mining.
Hi, Calvin, you may like to wrap up to answer some questions if you like.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so sorry to interrupt, but we got a few questions here. Just first one here from Johnson. He's asking, what's the situation like in Brazil right now? Are your contractors and counterparts able to work? Like talk about COVID, probably.
Yes, mining has been classed as strategic in the industry. So the mining industry is actually operating. We are obviously operating under strict rules, and we have protocols in place. But the answer is yes, it is operating. It is seen to be strategic. Sigma project in its own right has been classed as strategic to the country. But on saying that, I have to say, Gilbert, we are working to extreme strict protocols. People are tested once a week, and entry and exit to the site is limited, and you actually are checked in coming in as well. So you cannot arrive without certificates. So people that are coming from other areas are all tested beforehand. We have been operating here now for about a year, and I don't want to preempt it, but we have had not one case on site.
So one from Michael, what will be the major risk factors from now until the phase 1 production in 2022? What do you think?
The main risk that we're managing here is construction risk. So construction, COVID, for example, I would class in construction risk that could cause delays. So these things are being managed. We have got professional Brazilian and international project managers involved to manage construction risk, and it ranges from logistics to COVID to quality. So construction risk is the main issue for us facing us at the moment. And I think we've got it under control. It's been identified, obviously, areas of higher risk and lower risk. And what we do is bring in the professionals that we believe are actually more capable than Sigma to handle those type of risks. For example, importing material into Brazil, I have a company that absolutely specialized in actually doing that. And we use them for doing that type of work. Another group that actually is controlling our COVID protocol, so to speak. This is how we're trying to measure, but that I would say was the most prominent risk.
Thank you for your time here, Kelvin, today.
Well, it's my pleasure, and thanks for the invitation to join the conference.